They was not scared of Suge Knight. They was terrified.
Like, was somebody from the barbershop like punch you and knock you out after that? Like, you be knocked out like from the guy from the barbershop do that? It changed, and they be like, Suge's outside, and everybody be like, yeah.
What do you want? Well, I don't lead by money. I've never let money lead my life.
Eminem and 50 Cent have just made a huge impact on the game, sending a clear message aimed directly at Suge Knight. What they've revealed has left everyone questioning everything we thought we knew about their feud and their sense of loyalty. The two of them are still holding on to deep grudges against Suge for how he treated some of their closest associates. If you're not familiar with the history, let's break it down quickly. This drama didn't just surface yesterday. Eminem and 50 Cent inherited the tension the moment they connected with Dr. Dre. By doing so, they stepped right into the conflict with Suge Knight, whose real name is Marion Hugh Knight Jr.
My life.
And it was real. It's like, man. This is when I knew. I'm like, damn, Eminem is a real.
I was walking to the seat. I'm standing up to the side, and M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, something ain't right. So I start making my way around to come up the aisle, and next thing I know, you see all these guys talking about death row, death row. I was like, death row, what's it got to do with him? He said, hey man, Suge sent him a message. I was like, oh, yeah. Well, in 1999 at the Source Awards, Suge Knight sent his henchmen, man.
Suge started his career working security for high-profile figures like Bobby Brown, but it didn't take long for him to realize the real power wasn't in being on stage, it was in calling the shots behind the scenes. In 1991, Suge partnered with Dr. Dre and Dick Griffey to create what would later become one of the most influential empires in rap history.
And the Source Award for Best Performance goes to...
Who's the winner?
Where my dogs at?
DMX! Why
DMX! That empire was Death Row Records. When Dre released The Chronic in 1992, it revolutionized the music industry, changing everything. Then came Snoop Dogg with Doggy Style in 1993, which dominated the charts. The game was further shaken up when Tupac joined the roster, solidifying Death Row's place at the top. Death Row wasn't just a record label, it was a culture. They had the beats, the attitude, the money, and complete control of the streets. But behind all that success was a dark side that no one could ignore. Suge Knight didn't just run Death Row, he ruled it with an iron fist.
After that, we got out of there. We called the limo. This is where it gets f***ed up. We called the limo. Death Row is still sitting out there waiting for us. The limo's pulling off as we're coming out. Death Row's behind us. It was like, this motherfucker's trying to kill us, man. What they trying to do? What do they want?
M's ready to swing on someone if he has to.
Yeah, man. You know, like I said, he ain't no punk. You know, we were all going out. We were supposed to be on vacation and having a good time with our family and kids and wives, you know, and, just parlaying, man. As the plane land, they open the door up and you got Honolulu police standing right there talking about, hey, y'all got to come with us. And it was about 20 officers, man. Say, hey, you guys got to come with us. Death Row Records is here, and they wreaking havoc.
Rumor has it that Vanilla Ice was even pressured into handing over his royalties. That's just the start of it. Stories about Suge Knight are downright shocking. Multiple sources claim Suge had artists stripped down in his office over petty issues that could have been resolved with a simple conversation. The entire operation ran on fear and control. If Suge said jump, you jumped, no questions asked. By 1996, Dr. Dre had seen enough. He was done with the madness. Dre didn't just walk away. He gave up his royalties and 50% ownership of Death Row, everything just to escape. That's how badly he wanted peace. He left millions on the table to build Aftermath Records from scratch. But Suge wasn't about to let it go. He felt betrayed by Dre and made it his personal mission to ensure Dre would never shine again without him.
And then, one cassette tape changed everything. While digging through demos with Jimmy Iovine, Dre heard something that made him go,
what the fuck and who the fuck that?
The voice belonged to Eminem, a young rapper from Detroit struggling to make ends meet. Raised by a single mother, Eminem had faced poverty, bullying, and hardship, but those struggles fueled his fire. In Detroit's underground rap scene, Eminem worked relentlessly to prove himself.
M had inherited Dr. Dre's beef by signing with Dre.
Then began to do everything he could to discredit both Dre and Eminem.
What do you think of Eminem? Is that what do you think of white rap?
If you really from the ghetto, and you really doing those things you rapping about, you talking about, I can respect that.
Right.
But if somebody else writing your rhymes, somebody else, if you telling somebody else's story, that really don't mean.
For a while, it seemed like Suge might have the upper hand. Aftermath's early releases didn't perform well, and whispers on the streets suggested that maybe Dre had lost his touch. Meanwhile, Suge stood by, watching everything unfold as if he didn't even need to do anything. But just when it seemed like Dre might be finished, he pulled off a move no one saw coming. He signed a young, hungry rapper from Detroit, a kid who had fire in his soul, Eminem. And when the Slim Shady LP dropped, the entire industry was turned on its head. Eminem entered the scene raw, unfiltered, and sharper than ever, leaving everyone stunned.
Dr. Dre left first, Pac died. All of those things kept us at number one. The music changed. The direction changed.
After Tupac's passing, Suge Knight found himself behind bars, and Snoop Dogg had become another thorn in his side. Much like Dr. Dre, Snoop didn't get involved in the East Coast versus West Coast feud, and he maintained friendships with people Suge considered enemies, which didn't sit well with him. The tension between them escalated quickly. Furious over Snoop's defiance, Suge even went as far as to threaten his life. Meanwhile, Eminem snagged 3 Grammys and Dr. Dre was officially back on top. Suge Knight couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. He began plotting again. But this time, it wasn't just Dre he had a problem with, he had set his sights on Eminem too. According to several media outlets, Suge was working behind the scenes with a clear agenda. Fast forward to 1999, when an unforgettable incident took place at an award show. Eminem was simply trying to get to the stage, likely thinking it would be like any other night.
And the Source Award for Best Performance goes to...
Who's the winner?
Where my dogs at?
Out of nowhere, Suge's crew rolled in, decked out in red shirts, causing a scene. They surrounded Eminem, shouting death row right in his face, clearly trying to rattle him and send a message. But Eminem didn't flinch. He remained calm, walked up, handed the award to DMX, and casually returned to his seat unaffected. Even outside the venue, Suge's people weren't letting it slide. They lingered around Eminem's limo, acting as though they were ready to escalate things, but Eminem didn't crack under the pressure. Having faced much worse growing up, he wasn't about to be intimidated by a stunt like that. Suge, however, never truly let it go. Every time Eminem started dominating the game, Suge found a way to throw shade, whether through offhand comments in interviews or subtle moves behind the scenes. He continuously tried to downplay Eminem's success, suggesting that he didn't come from the streets and was just playing a character. But Suge wasn't just talking trash. In 1999, during a death row reunion party in Hawaii, Suge decided it was time to make a move. The event was filled with major figures Dre, Snoop, Eminem, and their families all gathering for what was supposed to be a relaxing getaway. But Suge had other plans. Sources claim Suge brought in his crew and spread them out across the city, making it look like they were preparing for a conflict. They weren't there to just party. They were there to stir things up. Word of this got back to Dre quickly, and they weren't about to take any chances, especially with their families involved. They called in heavy security and even law enforcement to make sure nothing went wrong. Then, in 2002, everything changed. Eminem heard 50 Cent's mixtape, Guess Who's Back, and immediately recognized his potential. He showed it to Dre, and just like that, the plan was set in motion. Dre and Eminem signed 50 Cent to Shady and Aftermath, and the stage was set for a new era. When Get Rich or Die Tryin' dropped on February 6, 2003, it was a total takeover. The album shot straight to #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 872,000 copies in its first week alone. There was no denying if 50 Cent had arrived. In a big way, but stepping into Dre and Eminem's world also meant stepping into their old beef. And Suge Knight was still lurking, moving in shady ways. Suge wasn't just throwing subtle shots. He was actively trying to interfere. Reports suggest that Suge Knight attempted one of his old intimidation tactics. Word is that he showed up to 50 Cent's video shoot in the Dock Club, bringing a crew of about 30 serious-looking individuals. As soon as people saw Suge and his entourage, most of the people on set quickly bailed. Nobody wanted any trouble with Suge's squad that day. But here's where it got interesting. 50 Cent didn't back down. He stood his ground, looked Suge Knight directly in the eyes, and essentially asked him, "What's up?" That moment spoke louder than any words. When Suge realized his usual tactics weren't going to work on 50, he backed off without saying a word. Just when it seemed like the situation might cool off, Eminem dropped a bombshell that reignited everything. An unreleased diss track, Smack, leaked, and let's just say Eminem wasn't holding back. On the track, he didn't just take shots at Suge. He went for the jugular, ripping into both Suge Knight and Ja Rule. But it didn't stop there. Eminem took things further, blaming Suge for the deaths of two rap legends, Tupac and Biggie. Eminem rapped, "I'm holding Suge responsible for the deaths of the two greatest rappers to ever grace the face of this planet. If only the late great Mr. Christopher Wallace could talk, he could tell you himself." He also claimed, "I'm holding Suge responsible for the death of Ja Rule or anyone else down with death row." This line hit the streets like an explosion. The track didn't just leak and fade away. It reignited old beefs that many thought had been buried years ago. As of now, Suge Knight hasn't commented on the track, but the internet didn't waste any time. People quickly started talking, and the buzz only got louder. After Smack leaked, it wasn't just Suge Knight feeling the heat. Ja Rule was pulled into the fire too. Ja wasn't about to stay silent. Word is that he began throwing shots at Eminem and 50 Cent in interviews, trying to paint them as industry-made and soft. But 50 Cent wasn't the type to let things slide. He fired back instantly, releasing diss track after diss track, even calling out Ja Rule by name on songs like Back Down. It was straight up disrespectful, and fans loved it. Every line, every track, 50 made it clear that he wasn't afraid of anyone, whether it was Suge, Ja, or anyone else, M. Meanwhile, Suge stayed in the background, trying to maintain his boss-like status without getting his hands dirty. Rumors spread that he was still attempting to undermine Dre, Eminem, and 50 behind the scenes. But it didn't matter. Shady Aftermath was on top. They were selling millions of albums, dominating radio, and crushing tours. There was no stopping the momentum. Still, the danger was real. Sources close to Eminem and 50 said they always had extra security with them, bulletproof vehicles, armed guards, the whole package. They knew that old grudges didn't simply fade away, especially when someone like Suge Knight felt disrespected, both in the streets and behind the scenes. As Shady Aftermath continued to rise, the tension remained. Everyone knew the stakes. Some people on the internet commented on how intense things were. I'm no expert on hood politics, but I've heard a lot of people say the white dudes are usually the craziest because they have to prove themselves twice as hard. Another user added, 50 did exactly what anyone should do to a bully: stand up and show no fear. Bullies thrive off fear alone, and that right there may explain why Eminem and 50 clicked so well from day one. No fear, no backing down, just raw energy. One commenter even said Suge didn't care about the music, he cared about power. Funny enough, he still does now. The big question that's circulating the internet is whether Eminem should have dropped Smack earlier. Would it have had an even bigger impact if he had released it when the streets were hotter and the tension was more intense? It's fascinating how deep this story runs. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Drop your thoughts down below. I want to hear what you think about all this madness. Catch you in the next one.